Nicole, welcome back to the podcast. I love that we're having a round two. For those of you just hearing for the first time, Nicole and I did a podcast probably like a year or two ago, maybe longer. I fell in love with Ring Concierge after I met Nicole. It's been the only diamonds that I've adorned myself with recently. I'm obsessed. And so I'm so excited to do part two with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah. So let's dive right into your recent expansion because I know when we spoke, retail was something that was exciting. You're just opening up stores, but I would love to touch on what's been happening in the business and how and what new challenges has that made you face?
Yeah, so we're a socially native, digitally first brand. We've always, we're an 11-year-old company. We've always had an e-com presence and a social presence. And post-COVID, it became very clear that the consumer wanted to be back in stores. And so, you're seeing a lot of D2Cs that used to only have an e-com presence opening up stores, and that very much applies to us as well. We have two New York City stores that we opened up after COVID. They did really, really well. And so this year we are expanding into other markets, LA, Houston, we're about to open in Boca. And what's super interesting about this category is that it's still a category people have a hard time pulling the trigger with online for whatever reason. I think luxury was one of the last to move online, and jewelry is lagging even slower. So 90% of jewelry purchases in the US are actually still done in brick and mortar, which is super interesting because it's a really high percentage. And we as a company have really only been playing online up until recently. So we're really excited to be able to interact with our customers, let them try things on. I mean, we hear consistently, oh, wow, like I wouldn't have bought that online, but now that I'm in the store, I actually really like this piece. I was looking at something else. So I think just being able to really connect with them and let them touch and feel the quality of the product is going to be the biggest next step for our brand's growth.
Has it changed you as a leader? Because I remember before COVID, when we had stores, it was like wholesale, e-com. Oh, fuck, we got to think about stores. And now you have five. It's a different type of employee. It can be a seasonal business more so than anything else. So I'm curious how you've had to adapt and or change your leadership style to find success with that.
I mean, physical retail is a beast. It really is. I can do e-com with my eyes closed at this point, and we are figuring it out still. To your point on the employees, it's a very different type of employee. There's a natural turnover that happens at a much higher rate when it comes to retail sales associates than I'm used to, and having to constantly retrain and make sure they understand the product and they're giving the right experience to the customer. It's really hard. They're not sitting in our corporate office, they're not in our corporate meetings with us. And so how do you translate what works for you as a brand and why you exist to now 5 different locations with employees that maybe have only been there for 2 weeks. It's really hard. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to build out store programs, but we have to in order to grow because people still want to buy jewelry in stores.
So when you find yourself faced in those new territories, where do you turn to or how do you figure that out? Because I feel like it's such a specialty and it can be, and you put it perfectly, it's a beast.
Mm-hmm. We have a good team. Our current head of retail has extensive experience in retail. And so she's the one that's navigating this for us. But what's tricky and we've started a company as well. For us, anything new, we're doing it for the first time. We don't have playbooks to go off of. We don't have physical retail handbooks that we've perfected over the past 10 years. We're creating them today. So a lot of what's happening is taking senior team members that we've spent a lot of time hiring over the past 2 years and having them build those playbooks for Ring Concierge. What do they look like? And disseminating that to the team and then making sure they build junior team members under themselves to actually get a lot of this done. So it's a little bit of we're building the plane while we're flying it that's happening. But I think that's like every high growth company anywhere. That's how you have to operate to keep moving forward.
Yes.
So we're busy, we're stressed.
What do you do to manage the stress?
I am not great at it. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe you have tips for me. I used to do Pilates a lot, and that's what I would do. But I now have two little kids. I have a 3-year-old and a newborn. And so anything that is not them or work is just gone out the window. So I definitely need to figure out how to be better balanced because I naturally manage my stress well, but it's still not healthy.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things we're going to be on the quest for a long time, and adding kids just makes it more stressful because you go, oh, if I had 10 more hours to work, then I could get it done. But I think sometimes it's just like it'll never get done because we're entrepreneurs and we'll always create our next problem or our next expansion that leads to more problems. And so it's just like sometimes I feel, I don't know if you experience this, like I'm just like starting to pull back on the reins. Like, yes, that's a good idea, but you don't have to do it right now because it would mean more stress, time away from family, kids, whatever.
That's what I think I'm bad at, to be honest. It's never a lack of ideas. It's always a lack of resources for us. I have 5 million things I want to do that I know would work. Well, we should try this. We should implement this high touch customer reach out strategy. And it always comes down to team bandwidth and it not being possible or my own bandwidth. And that I have a hard time not moving forward with things that I know could help grow the business, but I need to get better at it because that is what makes it so tough to keep up with. But at the same time, that's also how I've operated for the past decade and why the business has grown.
Yeah. So would you say your approach now as a mom of two and as a CEO is different than it was the last time we spoke with one child? I think you might have been had a newborn when we last spoke.
Yeah, it's so different, especially with a toddler who actually can say things like, I don't want you to go to work, it's definitely different. I used to dedicate so many more hours to the business than I can now. And it took me a little bit to become okay with that because at the end of the day, I have a great team. We have 70 people. We've built out a C-suite over the past year. They are heavy hitters. It's amazing. But I still feel the most comfort when I have like my hands in the weeds of the business. That's when I feel the best about how it's going to perform and what we're doing. And I've had to make a conscious decision to not be as involved as I would want to be in order to make sure I'm actually putting my, children to bed at night or walking my daughter to school every morning. So I've had to become okay with it. But, as kind of a workaholic and an entrepreneur, it's a really tough adjustment. I mean, you have 4 kids, right? I don't know how you balance it.
There isn't a balance. I think that's the thing I keep saying is it's not a balance. It's like this integration. Sometimes you're doing both at the same time. Like I'm taking my kid on a walk with a stroller, but I'm answering emails with the other hand, or, I mean, or letting shit just, it was just, okay, no work's gonna get done this morning and not like everyone's sitting there waiting for me to answer something, but like I'm just gonna be behind when I get home because I had to attend the history fair.
Mhm.
But I don't know.
I agree. I do not think there's a possible balance.
No. And the only thing that makes it feel more imbalanced, and it's a sacrifice, I think, on our parts, is you said it, it's family and work. Right now, I don't have girls' dinners or girls' trips or date nights. Like I'm just like, nope, that's on the shelf for now until one of these things, can breathe a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's also tough to see a light at the end of the tunnel as to when that can get back in my life. I don't have any intent of selling this business anytime soon. And so then the reality is I'm operating it and I'm the face of it. And so yes, we might have a bigger team, but that doesn't mean I can pull, the pressure actually I think the pressure is more intense now than it was when we were a smaller team and I had more on me. I think the bigger we get, the more people expect us to keep growing and be successful, and the expectations around how the company operates continues to increase. So I feel way more pressure today than I did 4 years ago.
Well, now you know what's at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you said something which I feel like is very rare for a founder to say, which is you have no plans to sell the business. I swear to God, every founder I mean is like, I'm going to sell it in 2 years. I'm going to sell in 3 years. And I'm just like, well, I'm a lifer, so I don't know what that's like. Even though we sold it, but I'm still there. What has that decision been like for you? Because I feel like again, it's this drug that everyone's like, build, buy. I mean, build, sell, start over.
Yep. So I think the reason why it's not been this major desire of mine is because I didn't start the company thinking it could become this big. I was 26. I had just gotten engaged. I did not want to work at my, job as a buyer at a department store anymore. I wanted to just do something on my own. And I was like, I think there's something here. The world of engagement rings is so antiquated. The experience is terrible. None of these companies understand women. No one in the diamond industry. There's basically no women in the diamond industry, which makes no sense since we're the end user. So I just thought I saw there was an opportunity and I thought I could fulfill it, but I thought it would be this like small high touch service that I'd provide. And my initial goal was literally to replace my salary that I had at Bloomingdale's, which I can tell you is not big. And as long as I could replace that, I wasn't going to go back to work at a department store. And so that was it. That was my whole initial goal. I didn't even I had no clue how the world of VCs work or fundraising. And this was kind of at the very beginning of that big explosion of these unicorn companies and these female founders. None of that was really that talked about at this point. This was a decade ago. Now, I think if I were 26 starting a company, I'd probably be like, okay, how do I fundraise? How do I exit in 2 years? But I didn't start it that way. And then it was profitable and it grew for a decade. And we never needed institutional, we didn't need to raise capital. So I just figured, let's keep going. Let's keep growing this. And that still is my mindset. But obviously it gets harder and harder with each year I get older to keep saying, I'm just going to keep grinding and running this business. So I am definitely thinking about what does the long term look like. Maybe I hold on to this forever. Maybe in 5 years, we look at some kind of institutional investor or an exit. I think as long as I keep the business healthy, I've got options for myself. But that is why I don't think that way, because I didn't start it ever even anticipating that being an option for me.
Yeah. What would you say has been the hardest part recently for you that you weren't expecting, or a hard scenario that just felt
Yeah,
like, ugh.
there's a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of macro headwinds. It's not a great year for any retailer. I think everybody had explosive years during COVID and thought it could continue. And it's we faced some harsh realities that no, you can't just grow 80 to 100% every year which was what we were going off of. I mean, we were doubling every single year for 9 years straight. So I just thought this is how this works. And then 2023, that didn't happen. We still grew double digits, but we did not grow to the level we planned to. And we had invested a lot in our team size, preparing for another massive year. And instead, we grew, lower double digits. So that was a big, big reality check for me. We're not invincible. We can't just assume that we're going to keep exploding in a way we have with and not have to plan for slower years. Major wake-up call for me last year in that regard. And
When you had that slap in the face, what did you do to sort of say, okay, this is not going to continue. So here's what I'm tweaking to mentally know that that's a bummer, but also like make sure the business is healthy.
well, we hired a CFO. So that was one of the first things. I was like, okay, the finances of this company have gotten wildly complicated and the numbers we're working with are very big. We need a CFO. Like we need someone with an experienced CFO with D2C retail under their belt to come in here and make sure that we are making sound decisions. I've always been pretty financially conservative because the business was self-funded and it had to be profitable for us to continue each year. I'm not independently wealthy. Like my entire my ability to financially exist is dependent on this business. So brought in a CFO. The other big thing was hyper focusing on expenses in a way we didn't in the past. You know, we never spent frivolously, but we also didn't go through things to figure out how to optimize them, because the top line, if the top line is big enough, you can hide a lot of sins. And we were growing so fast that there were definitely a lot of things we were doing wrong operationally, financially, because it didn't matter when you're doubling. But it does matter if you're only growing, let's say 10, 20%. It does matter. Your spend, your head count, all of that can make or break you at a slower rate. So that's where my whole focus was this past year, which is not where I want it to be. That's not the fun part, right? The fun part of a business isn't like deeply assessing operational expenses and headcount. Like, I didn't start a jewelry company to do that, but that's where I spent my year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always those moments when you're spending that time doing the thing that you're just like, this is not why I started the business. But I look back at those moments with like, I learned an entire new language. I'm so much better off as a designer because of it. I'm sure and so it sucks in the moment, but I think sometimes it really pays off.
I couldn't agree more. It is the amount I learned over the past year has been probably, I think it's you can't get that through an MBA. Like what we kind of went through to right size the way we were operating the business. And we refinanced our debt facility. So we have a loan that helps us fund our inventory. We went through the whole process of getting new banks, and we didn't have the CFO at the time. So I'm sitting there with all the biggest banks trying to tell them why they should be giving us multi-million-dollar loans and trust us. Like the amount I had to deeply learn about the finances and the lingo and what they care about over the past year was not my favorite topic, but now I have that knowledge. And I'm going to be that much stronger of a CEO because of that.
Yeah. Hey, my loyal listeners, it's Rebecca. Did you know that I have a Substack where I write about all of the materialistic things like my favorite sweatsuits or what I pack for my trips, all the things outside of my daily work and life that sort of just make things tick and that I love. So if you do enjoy reading, head over to substack.com/Rebecca Minkoff. Press the button to subscribe, support the cause, and I hope that with all of the busy things in your life, this brings you a little bit of shopping joy. So we're entering the holidays, or we're in the holidays. I've noticed women are like, I'm not waiting for anyone to buy me fucking diamonds. I'm buying the shit myself. I've always felt that way. But I'm just curious, you clearly saw that. And I'm wondering how it informs your marketing and your business, because I feel like it's very different from other brands who are still trying to be traditional about selling to the guy.
Totally. I mean, I always joke about every kiss begins with K's. No one wants to hear that. Like, that's just not real. That's not reality. And so I've always been the type of person that just like tells my husband, don't even buy me anything. I'm going to buy it for myself. Or just says like this, here's the link, buy this. Please don't go out on your own. My engagement ring, which was before I started the company, I went and put on hold somewhere. And I was like, it's this, or the answer is no, like it's something. Jewelry is so personal. If you invest in fine jewelry, you're wearing it all the time. You're wearing your engagement ring every day. You want to like it. You want to love it. It's expensive. And so we market to women directly, very intentionally for that reason alone. 80% of our online purchases are actually made by women. And even when it comes to engagement rings, where usually both partners are involved, or perhaps the woman is surprised, 90% of the time, the guys come in with screen grabs or with their girlfriend because they want to make sure she really likes it. She saw our marketing, she follows us on social, and she said to him, please don't deviate. So everything we do is with the end user in mind, which the fact that the jewelry industry doesn't operate that way is just confusing. That's not how the fashion industry operates. The fashion industry doesn't speak to men and say, buy your wife this shirt, she'll love it. Like, they're just telling women, like, these shirts are great, here's why, buy it for yourself. So why can't jewelry
Be the
why
same.
can't we speak to women that way in jewelry as well? It seems so antiquated to be speaking to men about jewelry.
Yes. Very antiquated, very not 2024. or 2020 for that matter.
No, no, no. So, our during the holidays, it's yes, the closer you get to like Christmas, Hanukkah, those like men will last minute panic purchase, but it's still women self-purchasing for themselves even during the holidays.
Yep. I love that women, at least it's starting, it feels like, to take these matters into their own hands. There's not this waiting game. It's like, this is what I want. I pretend to be surprised, but I send my assistant everything I like, and then he can pick from a laundry list of items, and then it just is easy.
I mean, that's exactly right. Like the guys kind of want to feel like a hero, like they did a good job. But at the same time, we don't want them to buy the wrong thing. So that is a big piece of what we do. We do a lot of hand holding with our male customers. Like, let me look at her purchase history. Let me understand what she already owns. Okay, she's going to want this, buy this. You're in good hands.
Yeah. So what would you tell a 26-year-old who sees a hole in the market? Like, what have you learned in this journey so far that you were like, this is what I did right and this is what I did wrong that you wish? Not that any wrong, you're here now, so clearly you weren't that wrong, but
I mean, I did so many things wrong, but that's the reality, right? You're not going to get it all right. I would say what I think I did really well in the beginning, and this was more so because I was so naive, but it worked in my favor. I was so scrappy. And I read The Lean Startup, which I don't even, it was trending at the time. It's probably not an entrepreneurial trend, but I still believe in it. And the concept of that book was to spend as little as possible before you really understand what your potential customer wants and to actually be interacting with them. Don't spend 2 years on R&D. Don't build out all these massive marketing campaigns until you actually get your customer. And so I think working face to face with them, communicating with them, pivoting the business 1 million different ways based on immediate customer feedback. We still do that, but I really did it in the beginning. And that's why I landed on a brand and a company that resonates so well with the customer, because it was all based on their feedback.
yeah.
I also think I was forced to be very thoughtful about every penny I spent because I didn't have funding and the business had to be profitable. And I mean, now that is kind of how a lot of D2Cs are trying to operate, but they never have in the past. I mean, there's so many big brands that have been around for a while that just this year are saying they're going to finally achieve profitability, like huge brands like The Real and companies like that just were not profitable for so long because the world of VCs would fund them. I never operated that way, which ultimately put me in a position where I have choices as a founder of what I want to do with the business because I'm not dependent on VC money to survive because we've been profitable. So I think those are two things that I think any person starting a company should do. There's no downside in being financially healthy and conservative, even if you do fundraise, to still be thoughtful about how you're spending and to be in tune with your customer or your end user. Things I did wrong, oh my gosh, so many. I think getting the team right took a long time. Understanding when to in the beginning, you need a totally different type of employee than you do when you're bigger. You need someone that's going to like sit on the floor and pack boxes with you and be super scrappy, and that's great. But being able to understand when you need to start to transition to people with more experience and the HR piece of that and the emotions behind that are really tough to navigate and figure out. And it used to impact me a lot. Employee issues used to really, really eat at me. And now I've come to terms with it is just part of running a business.
Yep.
You have different
Yep.
personalities, people come, people go. And just understanding that's just what operating a business is like and not letting it impact me personally. I think that's been a major learning that I probably didn't, that I let take too much of my brain space in the beginning years.
Oh yeah. I remember going on one of my first vacations and we had our first employee resign and I was like, my vacation's ruined. She
Yeah.
ruined my vacation because my family member is leaving me. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, we get a resignation. I'm like, good luck. I hope you do well. Like, I'm just like, whatever, no sweat off my back. We will find someone. It's wild how it can be like, this ruined my life to like, bye.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just you get used to it. Like, how many times can you be upset because someone leaves or you have to let them go? Like, you can't let that upset you 10 years later. You've got to figure it out. But I think that was hard. And I think the other biggest learning is what happened last year. I wasn't deeply enough in the weeds of the finances of the business. It's the least sexy part, right? Like, you're a fashion designer. I create jewelry. Like, I don't want to be in our P&L, and I always understood, where were we at in terms of top line? I understood the highest metrics. I never understood all of it. And that was a mistake because I do think I should have and would have been more ahead of the changes we needed to make in terms of how we were spending had I understood it sooner rather than I was reactive, right? We missed top line and I was reactive to what that meant we needed to do in terms of fixing the bottom line instead of being proactive about it. And so I think everybody has to understand everything going on with the finances, not just the high level P&L, but like deeply understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my weakness for the first 7 years is I didn't understand it. And God damn it, the changes I would have made had
So
I
many changes.
implemented that. Yeah. Yeah.
So many changes. I would have changed. I can't even tell you. Yeah, I can't even tell you. I would have slept a lot better over the past year had I been more proactive about all of that and not having to scramble to figure out, how do we still stay operational when we're missing top line?
Yeah. So I know I asked this about all my guests, but as my last question, having learned lots of things since we last spoke, is there anything you want to leave my listeners with that is great advice?
I think for anyone who you don't even have to be a founder. I think everybody has different superpowers and are really good at certain things. And I think sticking to your gut with whatever those areas are that you feel strongest at is critical. I have hired a lot of senior people over the past year, a lot of people that have way more years of experience than I do. And what I've had to become comfortable with is reminding myself that I know this business best. I know what I'm good at. And in those areas, regardless of other senior opinions, I need to hold true to that because that's why the business exists in the first place. And that's why I'm in the seat I'm in. And I think for women, it's even harder to feel that confidence. I think it's hard, especially if you're surrounded by a bunch of men in suits. How do you feel confident holding your ground? But I deeply believe in gut, and I don't think it's just this frivolous thing. It's usually it's from an aggregation of all these different experiences and learnings you have. And that's the reason why you feel strongly about different things. There's actually, data behind perhaps your gut reaction, whether or not you realize it. And having the confidence to stick to that, I think is the single most important superpower anyone can have.
I love that you said that, and I love that you distilled down that gut isn't just this woo-woo. It's not just a woo-woo feeling. It really is built on everything you just said. And I think that's so valuable because I talk about following your gut, but I've never been able to define why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason if you feel strongly about something. We're smart women, right? It's not just something we're randomly feeling and pulling out of thin air. There's a reason behind it from something we've learned in the past.
Yeah, I love it. So, where are these 5 locations where we can touch and feel your gorgeous gems?
We've got Bleecker Street and the Upper East Side in New York City. We are in Century City in LA. We are opening in Boca we'll be open in Boca by the time this airs. And we are in the Galleria in Houston. And I would love to give your listeners a 25 off code.
Yes, please.
Cool. Okay, let's do Mink Off 25.
Love it.
You can use on ringconcierge.com.
That's a big discount for diamonds. I just want to let everyone know. That's pretty big.
It's really, really big. I mean, it's it's the holidays, like treat yourself, ladies, and it'll be good for 1 week. So make sure you use it. It's December. Gift yourself some diamonds because you deserve it.
That's right. I know what I'm buying.
What is it?
It's the lariat that I'm obsessed with that I originally saw on Psy and that I keep borrowing for all my fancy events. I'm like, I'm gonna pull the trigger. I've just been
I
waiting.
know you've been talking about that one. That's
I
a
know. I
major
can't get
piece.
I like to make sure that I can't get it out of my mind.
It's
You
a
know?
major piece. You won't regret
Major
that.
piece.
It's so good. I saw it on Sci on TV last week. It pops.
Oh, it pops. It's a good one.
All right. Well, it's good talking to you.
You too. Thanks for coming on again, and thanks for all the beautiful jewels you have been loaning me.
Oh my God, anytime. Let us know.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.